Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with fabulous concert programs, number 55. And this is the third in our series of unusual Sibelius works that don't get programmed as often as they should, and suggesting some wonderful ways to do it. Today, the work in question is not a symphony. It's Tapiola, his concluding symphonic poem, and really I think the last major thing he wrote of any type. What an amazing, atmospheric, spooky work this is. Totally fabulous and gripping. Now, there was a wonderful story about Tapiola, which I've told before, but we might as well hear it again, shall we? In Gramophone, Simon Rattle gave a particularly stupid interview when he was in the midst of doing his Sibelius cycle. Now, I had all kinds of reasons for disliking his Sibelius cycle, not the least of which was that EMI interrupted its Berglund Digital Helsinki Philharmonic Sibelius cycle to do a complete Simon Rattle, which of course wasn't anything nearly as good. I mean, it goes without saying. And Simon Rattle's done two Sibelius cycles. He did another one in Berlin, which was a little better, but still nothing special. Anyway, what Simon Rattle said about Tapiola was, he said, well, it's very hard to program Tapiola. It's so atmospheric, it's so this, it's that one doesn't know where to put it. It's too short to be a program, a half program on its own. But on the other hand, you can't follow it with anything because it's so atmospheric and gripping and nothing can come after and blah, 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 blah. Total bullshit. Completely ridiculous. But like so many artists, Rattle was given to making profound, pseudo-profound, sententious statements in the hope that he would sound profound. I mean, he never did. Some people may have thought he did if they were as silly as he was, but no, it didn't work at all. So anyway, a couple months later in Gramophone, and this is, one of the most wonderful things about England and the English, I must say, somebody wrote a letter to the editor, which Gramophone published. And that letter said, gee, I was really surprised to see Simon Rattle's puzzlement as to what you could possibly do with Tapiola, because Thomas Beecham conducted it all over the place, and he had no problem making concert programs with it. And there followed a list of programs, and it was Tapiola and España, Tapiola and Berlioz, Tapiola and Mozart. I mean, Beecham didn't care at all. He just plugged it in wherever he damn well pleased, and it was fine. Everything worked out, and you can certainly do that. It was a wonderful letter. Anyway, my approach is a little bit different because the point here is to create something around Tapiola or with Tapiola that somehow works. Over the course of intermission. I mean, not everything has to be related to it, but in this case it's not. But things that go well with Tapiola. Tapioca. Things go even better with Tapioca. Yes, but with Tapiola. And so we begin with Tapiola. Why? Because it's just so moody and gripping and marvelous. And it's very funny. Some of you have said that Tapiola could be considered a symphony like the Seventh. And you'd have an argument because it is more symphonic in form than the Seventh Symphony actually is, which Sibelius originally called a symphonic fantasia. It's actually in perfect monothematic sonata form. It really is. It's all based on that opening motive. Da 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 dum ba ba ba. That's it. The whole thing is based on that simple idea and grows out of it organically. It's really quite an amazing piece. But it does have pictorial and sort of episodic interludes and things. And so maybe that's why Sibelius didn't want to call it a symphony. But all of his symphonic poems are in sonata form, usually what we would call Mozart's second movement sonata form, that is, sonata form without a development. You'd have an exposition with two subjects, and then you go back to enlarged and developed versions of each of those subjects, rising to a big climax, and then going to the conclusion. For example, Oceanides does that. Night Ride and Sunrise kind of does that, at least parts of it do. Anyway, the bottom line is, Pochiola's daughter definitely does that, although it has a real development section in the middle. But they're all in sonata form. Nice, wonderful, beautiful, succulent, juicy, fabulous sonata form, and Tapiola is. So if you want to think of it as a symphony, that's okay. I just tend to respect Sibelius's wishes about these things, or at least the things that he said, if not his ultimate wishes. Anyway, so we start out with Tapiola, which is spooky and atmospheric and fabulous and wonderful, and really ought not to take 20 minutes. I really prefer performances that move, that are under, 18 or thereabouts, but it's wonderful. Second piece, something really unusual and delightful. And the reason it works with Tapiola is because it's really unusual and delightful. It's not the same old, same old. And so that aura of specialness, sort of seeps in, even though the musical style couldn't be more different. It's the Schubert Wanderer fantasy in Liszt's concerto arrangement for piano and orchestra. I adore this piece. And even Tove, who hated Liszt, said that Liszt's arrangement was absolutely perfect and respectful and wonderful. And it really is. It's fabulous. It works beautifully, beautifully well. And it's concerto length, 20 some odd minutes, roughly. And it's just great. And we never hear it. And I don't know why we never hear it, because everyone acknowledges the fact that the Wanderer Fantasy is a masterpiece, and Liszt is Liszt, and Schubert and Liszt are two popular composers. You stick them together with a great soloist, and who wouldn't want to come see that? You'd have to be out of your mind not to want to come see it. So it's a great piece to follow up with Tapiola because it's special and different, but at the same time, it's Schubert and Liszt. It's just perfect. So then you go out to intermission, we all toddle out, and we toddle back. And the main feature, the Moeran Symphony in G minor. Moeran Symphony in G minor is one of the great masterpieces of English 20th century symphonic writing. It's gorgeous. It's fabulously interesting and original. And the last movement sounds just like Tapiola, sort of played sideways. It's so heavily influenced by Tapiola. It's a return to that atmosphere that we heard at the very beginning of the concert, but with a lot of different stuff before you get there. So it's not like you have 45 minutes of stretched out, sort of Tapiola stuff. That isn't what happens. The whole symphony is heavily influenced by Sibelius, true, but you don't get to the Tapiola bit until the last movement, which is just great. And so you play the Moeran, and by the time you get to the end, you'll have this amazingly fulfilled feeling. Precisely the thing that Simon Rattle couldn't figure out what he was going to do. How are you going to do something after Tapiola? Well, here's how. Because not only does this do something after Tapiola, it does something musically fabulous after Tapiola and creates a magnificently coherent musical organism out of three otherwise completely different and dissimilar pieces. And I just love this program. I really do. And you do not want to hear the Moeran Symphony right after Tapiola because you don't want the similarity to be that obvious. You don't want one thing to sound like it's derivative. It's good to have something in the middle, have a little time, and then start with something that sounds like it's completely new, but then gradually works its way back to that same or similar spooky, bardic, primal atmosphere that's so magnificently evoked in Tapiola and in the finale of Moeran's G minor symphony, which ends loudly, by the way, and in the minor. Woohoo! It's like double the bang for your buck. So there you go, my friends. Give this program a try at home. I really urge you to do it. You're going to love it. It makes such a fantastic way to get to learn the Moeran Symphony, which isn't as well known as it should be, Tapiola, which has a mystique that needs to be somewhat dispelled, and the Schubert Liszt, which is an incredible masterpiece that no one ever does. Really, it's not like we have too much by these famous composers, especially orchestral music by Schubert. And who wouldn't want a piano concerto by Schubert? Go figure. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.